Jessica, thank you so much for being here with me this afternoon. And I wanted to ask you first, why did you want to be a part of this conference for the SCORE E3 conference?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And, over the last decade of running a business and growing professionally as an entrepreneur, a wife, a mother, all those ways, there's this one area that just keeps coming up, and that's the intangible losses that we experience in our growth journey. And
Mm.
most oftentimes they're intangible. So it usually takes a form in like the loss of expectations, hopes, and dreams. And I believe at my core, every time I've hit a roadblock, it hasn't really been a business problem or a people problem. It's been something inside me that I lack the tools to navigate through, is particularly around the area of loss and grief. And I just see it impacting professionals in such a way. There's really not a framework or a space for us to have those conversations. We look for more like, oh, what business strategy do I need? Or all of these things. And so it's something that I really believe a lot in, is giving people the tools to recognize when they might be dealing with the impact of an unresolved loss or the emotional response to that in the grief sector. So just bringing a little bit more awareness to how grief impacts entrepreneurs and business owners in a different way with a different lens.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a true thing, too. And it's something that people don't tell you about a lot of the time when you get into business for yourself.
They don't, and we're very, like, bootstrappy, and so we think, it's time to just put your big girl panties on and deal with it, and that isn't just one thing, it's like a cumulative effect that just shows up one day, and you're like, "Wow, I cannot move the needle." And so that was what happened to me. I couldn't think it out, I couldn't pray it out, and I was qualified to do both, and it wasn't until I started exploring the area of grief and how that particularly impacts entrepreneurship. So it is something I'm passionate about bringing awareness to, and just giving people the tools to have that conversation with each other and then do the work for themselves.
Yeah. Well, my next question was going to be what led you to do the work you're doing now, but you're kind of giving us that. So, what do you feel? Give us a little bit of your background and just kind of where you're coming from to let people know about that part of it as well.
Yeah, so I was in the private sector for a lot of years. And then I was, let's see, my second son was about a year old, and I just really wanted more time with them, and I wanted to be able to do something on my own. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to start my own business like we we all do. And I was going to just go out there and I was going to conquer the world, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I had a hope full of dreams, and I was just going to make it happen. And then about 18 months into that, I had a really significant loss, and it just changed the way I saw the world, and it changed the way I process things, and I lost a lot of money in business. And I had a background in psychology and family studies and biblical studies. So when I say I couldn't think it out or pray it out, I literally was qualified to do both of those.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what is wrong with me? I'm so optimistic. I have all these credentials that say you should be able to make it. And I was really, really stuck. And then someone introduced me to a different conversation about grief. And I went to an intensive, and then I spent the next several years processing grief in a different way and looking at it as a through the lens of loss. So a loss is a change in a pattern of behavior or a change in circumstances. So that opens up a whole new conversation for us in the realm of what we would identify as loss, right? It's not just death, divorce, or disease, but it's the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations, the loss of relationships, the loss of resources, the loss of a lot of things. And then the emotional reaction, whatever we do, is that grieving experience. That's what we need to process. But we really aren't having that conversation in a lot of circles, especially in the entrepreneurial circle. So I just tried to stuff it down. And I tried all the things, and it just didn't work until I really learned how to process that specifically. It really was a breakthrough for me. And so I've gone on to pursue certification in neuroscience coaching. So I introduce a lot of brain-based strategies to help with that transition and to help us create systems for success. And then how, when we do run into emotional roadblocks, how do we process the emotion behind it?
I absolutely love that. I love that. And now you're an author too, right?
Yes. Yep. So
Okay.
I wrote my first book. It's called A Journey to Raising Brave Hearts. And it's really about learning how to embrace your brave and what that looks like for you and not comparing yourself to anyone else. But also what do we have to go through in order to embrace that brave? And then the social component of how do I recognize the brave in you and then encourage that to come out in you, right? And what kind of conversations do we need to have? It's also about stories about motherhood and learning to navigate the entrepreneurial world as a mom and what that looks like and that conversation that nobody has with you. So I wrote that one and then went into doing a guided journal process that's called Notice and Wonder. And it's really about noticing what's going on and then being curious about how we're going to problem solve it. So it gets into more of a strategic approach and introducing that habit of noticing life and then wondering instead of getting out of the shame cycles that say something must be wrong with me and looking more strategically about, oh, I noticed that I have a lot of emotion around this and I'm wondering what it could be connected to and what healing I might need to do to have a breakthrough.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. That's super useful information. I think, one of the things that you talk about with grief, and when we have these conversations with other entrepreneurs, there's also the conversations that we have with those of our friends who still have jobs where they have PTO and benefits and all of those things. And those little minor grief feelings that pop up when you're, oh, like I kind of, especially during the growth part of an entrepreneur's life, where you're
Yeah.
going, oh, I kind of miss that security and that grief for the security that you have before you've created it for yourself.
Oh, you're so right. And I really, this is just something I'm so passionate about is let's talk about what does grief look like in entrepreneurship because we want to compartmentalize it as something that we go through in our personal lives and then we don't get the luxury of talking about disappointment in the entrepreneurial journey because if we do, people think that, it didn't work or it's, not working out for you or you're complaining and so you have to maintain this state of optimism all the time and there's not what
Mm,
authentic sharing, which means that you are psychologically safe to say, I'm having a bad day, not a bad life, right? And so we feel guarded a lot where we can't express the ups and downs of it without sounding negative. And so having a conversation about, well, I have a loss of expectation and I'm working on processing it, that's a new language for us in entrepreneurship that's healthy, but also honest and with integrity. We can talk about the different transitional struggles that we go through. You're right. That loss of someone else is going to pay me when I take time off or going on vacation and not thinking about work. It's a discipline and in and of itself that is just another it's just another world that people don't understand. And also the grief of or the loss of feeling understood and relatable. When you talk to your friends that are working for someone or in that 9 to 5 world, they don't understand what it's like to get up at 4 a.m. and get your work done. And, they just don't understand it. So
yeah.
you automatically feel a little bit lonely because you become unrelatable to most of your peers.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there are the things where we may be able to set our own schedule in certain ways, though we know that it's really 24/7 in a lot of the time, but we set our own schedule and we do all of these things, but there's also, that security that is the trade-off. So, and a lot of us, especially service-based, may end up working weekends and holidays and all of those things that other people can just do what they want, and you miss out on some things sometimes.
You do. And then especially if you're looping in a family dynamic where you're a parent or a partner to someone, they often don't understand the temporary sacrifices for the long-term goals, right? And
Yeah.
so like working at home, my kids think that I work all the time, but that's because I work from home, right? They don't see the transition of going away to work and then coming home. They just see me home all the time. And so learning to have those different conversations, it's just quite a journey. It's like
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. That's such useful information. And I'm excited to hear everything else, especially the neuroscience with all of that. I love that kind of stuff. So in addition to your book as an author, what are some influential books do you have one, a couple, anything that stands out for you?
You know, when someone asks me what books do I have, like what should I read if I'm going to start my own business? It's always going to start with the mindset and for me, right? Cuz and
Mhm.
that's my lens of the world. But I really love the Go Giver series. Have you heard about that?
I'm sure I'll write that one down.
Yeah. So I love stories. I'm a natural born storyteller. And when I do
Mhm.
keynote speaking, it's always around a story because that's just how I feel like people relate. They want to see the life experience unfolding, you know? And so The Go Giver is a really short read. And then they have additional books called The Go Giver Leader and The Go Giver Influencer. And those were so encouraging to me about looking from a 30,000-foot view. They're not strategic as far as do this to start your business. It's more about who, who do I want to be in this space? What kind of culture do I want to build? And I found that entrepreneurs, man, they're going to find a way, but they need
Mhm.
to have the right people around them in order to do that. And they have to build culture if they're going to sustain and scale. And there's 100 different ways to do something, but if you don't have the right culture, none of them will work. So to me, it's about encouraging them and myself to build the culture first because the systems will change, the scaling techniques will change with technology, with advancements, with service, any of those things will change. Your strategies will change. But if you don't have a good culture, you don't really have anything to build on.
Yeah, absolutely true. Do you have any quotes that are meaningful to you, mantras, anything in that world that you kind of keep close to you?
Yeah, we'll have one that I say off, a couple that I use to coach myself, but also to coach other people is you always have to honor the journey and trust the process. And
Hmm.
so honoring the journey is being 100% honest about what you're going through all the time, and then trusting the process that you're going to get the tools or acquire the things that you need to do the thing you need to do. And I think oftentimes we want to detach from what we're currently going through and just stay in this toxic positivity loop where we're always trying to look at the good and always trying to look at the good and we minimize the daily struggle. I'm not suggesting that we focus on the daily struggle. I'm saying that we honor our journey by being 100% honest about what we're going through all the time so that it has integrity as we travel and as we scale our businesses as we go. And then trusting the process is just about trusting yourself and knowing that I am resilient. I will figure this out. But too many times we bail out because the emotional struggle is there and we don't have the tools to deal with that. And so we keep changing the process over and over and over again. We never get the momentum. So honor the journey by being honest and then trust the process that you are going to figure it out.
I love that. That comes up a lot for me in some of my meditation practice. One of the things that they talk about a lot is that these the thoughts, everything is temporary. Change is happening all the time around us, outside in nature, in us, in our bodies, and everywhere. And that while we do that, I want to focus on the good. And when the bad happens, sometimes it feels so weighted that we forget that those things are really kind of equal. And yeah, you need to have your mindset in a good place between them, but be aware that that temporary of the good, and nothing bad is ever going to happen again. And then the bad, when you're like, the world is terrible and my life is over, like you've got to have that balance in between there of being able to recognize that.
Absolutely. And a lot of times people don't really know how to verbalize honoring the journey or being truthful. So, one of the foundational techniques that I teach is that I don't need to know the details of what you're going through. I just need you to be honest about the emotion you're experiencing while you're going through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm.
sometimes the details aren't safe to share because someone else is involved or there's moving parts to it. So people want to withdraw. They can't talk about it, as they say. I'm like, you might not be able to talk about the details, but you'll always be able to talk about the disappointment, the fear, the frustration. You have to honor that stuff or it will become cumulative and you'll arrive at a paralysis by analysis status and you won't be able to move forward. So really, it's more about that honest emotion, being honest emotionally and being in integrity with yourself all the time.
Yeah, I love that. So what do you do? Okay, entrepreneur, and you work from home. So whenever you need to decompress, whenever you've got to kind of remove yourself, what are some of the things that you do to help with
Well, I have a garage full of possibilities.
that? Love that.
You know what that
I
means?
do. I absolutely do. Yeah.
So I'm a kinesthetic learner, as they say. I'm very hands-on. I love to do things. And a lot of the way I process life is through different art projects or a fixer-upper or something like that. So I really enjoy repurposing things and just artsy things like that. Like I might find a Pinterest find and then try to do my own version of that. I have a lot of those little opportunities around for when I'm like, all right, I just need to do something. And that's really good for me. But I live by the phrase, if you want to move your mind, move your body. So really anything that is like we just process by doing. That's how we process. That's our innate nature. Neuroscience backs that up 100%. We don't
Yeah.
we don't process by thinking. We process by doing. So anything that I can do and be in motion is how I decompress. So whether that's a walk or painting something or crafting something or writing, that's what I love to do.
I love that. And well, that makes me feel better too. It's something that like I know, but I like hearing you say that with your credentials behind you because I've gotten really into aerial silks over the last year. And so when the world is crazy, I go upside down. And that's what makes me feel better.
You know, I mean, you can cut this out if you want to, but that actually balances the vestibular. And so, like, when you need to process things, that is actually a technique that we teach ADHD kids to do to turn upside down. And anyway, so
Yeah.
you're doing a
No,
good
we're
thing.
not cutting that out. That is needed information. And that is very important. Yeah. And yeah, in fact, the kids thing that's interesting where I go at Springfield Aerial Fitness, they have circus kids, and I bet that would be really good for them. So
Yep.
that's awesome. So is there anything else that you want to just share with a tidbit, something that you feel is very important that you want to share with people?
You know, I I say this often to my clients that people come to me, I do mindset and success coaching and they come to me w- like I need to boost my confidence or I need to do this or looking for that extra piece. And I believe that everyone's already brave enough to create what they wish existed. They just need the right tools. And so for me, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be asking for help, right? So you already have the brave thing down. You got it. It's yours. It's just the right tools to move the needle in the direction of where you are and where you want to be. And we get to bridge that gap together. But what's important to me is that I teach you the tools to coach yourself off the couch and into your purpose. If you're just coming to me and I'm holding the magic key, you won't break away from that. And I think in the service based, especially in the coaching area and the counseling and that mental health space, there can become this dependence on the person that's supporting you and your mentor. And it's bad for business, but it's great for you. My job's to teach you everything you need to know to be a self-starter and to really own your own healing journey and your mindset journey so that you can coach yourself. I mean, that's come to me so many times is that I have to coach myself off the couch because no one's coming to save me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need those tools as well. And if I can give you those tools, then you have a different confidence about you. You're not going to be able to mitigate loss in your life or skip over the grieving process. But if I can teach you the tools that you need, you become emboldened and empowered that you are confident that whatever comes your way, you can deal with it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, nobody, it's similar. Nobody's going to go work out for you. Nobody is going to go and eat better for you. Nobody's going to do those things. So why would we expect anything different in what is our personal goals and in the little business baby that you're growing?
Yeah. And it's the same, people don't have business problems, marriage problems, parenting problems. They got personal problems that impact the way they show up in all those areas. And so it's important to me that the whole person gets equipped with what they need to be effective and live their purpose in all the areas of their life.
I love that. That's so good. Well, uh, before we say goodbye, is there anything else that you would like to invite people to your specific part of the event? Anything you'd like to let anybody know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what that looks like. This is my first time doing this, so I'm super curious about how it's all going to
Yeah.
unfold. But I would love for people that watch this to just start reflecting over what area of your life do you wish was better, more, or different? And then bring those questions to the panel. Anywhere that you wish your life was better, more, or different is our first level of identification in what might be incomplete for you that's holding you back from the fullness of what's possible. So be reflecting on what you wish was better, more, or different, and bring that to the conversation. And I can't wait to hear what it's going to look like.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to reflect on that. And then you'll be on our panel on May 6th. And I'm so excited to see you in person.
Well, thank you so much for making space for me to have this conversation. And I hope that everybody just gets a whole lot of value out of it and that it's encouraging to them on their journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica.